A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, you know there is a battle that is raging in Australia over free speech, and there are frequent attacks that look to silence Christians from reflecting what we might understand as biblical truth. But have you considered how much it costs when a Christian leader is dragged before the courts, when they're accused of hurting someone's feelings or misgendering a trans person by using the wrong pronouns? Well, there appears to be an unfair financial advantage for radical activists or people who want to throw accusations at Christians who want to stand on biblical truth. Well, joining us right now, Kirralie Smith. Kirralie leads the organisation called Binary. She's one of the very courageous women standing up to the rampant campaign to de-gender Australian society. Kirralie Smith, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thanks again for having me, Neil.
Kirralie, give us a little update here on all of these court appearances, because not just one, there's been a whole lot and there's still some that are outstanding. What's an update for us?
Correct. Yeah, I've faced 6 court cases so far, Neil, and I've been successful in all of them, but more on technicalities than anything else. And round 7 has just begun, and I still have court cases 8 and 9 ahead of me. And as you said, it's so expensive. These activists can bring their court cases, their complaints against me, at the taxpayer expense, or that they have an activist law firm behind them that cover all their expenses. I don't get a choice in any of these matters. I have to defend myself. So far, the legal bill is over $100,000, but it seems to be that they'll just continue and try and ground me down as they have done with others in the past. We know our friend Bernard Gaynor is. I think had 43 complaints brought against him under similar laws here in New South Wales, and it's all geared up to allow people to bring complaints, but it is very unfair on the defendants when it comes to defending ourselves. And let me be clear, Neil, I'm defending myself for calling males male. I have not insulted anyone. I have not used abusive language. I have not threatened. I have not harassed. I've done nothing but identify 2 males playing in female soccer teams and referred to them as male.
And what happens here, I imagine, is that someone who's got a little bit of an activist streak, who's been in some ways influenced by people who are on this sort of activist campaign around trans issues and such things, they get wind of the fact that you said something, or they're keeping an eye on what's happening and what you're saying in the papers or what you're saying on a podcast or something, and they're looking for an opportunity. Is that the way it sort of works, that someone calls you out and then all of a sudden you're in court?
Look, it could be like that, Neil. I can't speculate too much on what their motive or how they've come about. But other than to say, I took publicly available information that was published in public domains, republished those statements and facts, and consistently refer to these men as male. And so apparently that's enough reason for them to come after me under anti-discrimination laws. They're accusing me of vilification and violence for those words. I haven't met these people. I haven't engaged in any way, shape or form other than to report accurately and fairly and truthfully on the fact that they're male.
Now, come back to the cost of what happens when you are dragged before the courts. We might be assuming that somehow or other you've got legal training and you represent yourself and all is rosy, but that's not the case, I know. You say you've run up a bill somewhere in the vicinity of $100,000 just for calling out the obvious. Where's the money coming from? I don't think you're independently wealthy. Where does that money come from to pay your bills?
Not at all. No, thanks a great deal of thanks to our supporters, particularly Binary supporters who have so far raised the money to foot that bill. We have over 100,000 email subscribers, and they have been so faithful and kind and committed to free speech, committed to truth speech, and ensuring that I can take up this battle on their behalf. Because, they're saying, well, I think Donald Trump made this saying famous, actually, they're not trying to just silence me, they're trying to silence you. And this is all a tactic to force us to lie and to participate in the deception that males can change their sex and become female and have access to our services, our sports and our spaces. And that's unacceptable. If men want to identify as something they're not, that's fine, that's their prerogative. But to force us to accept that and then to concede our spaces and rights is beyond the pale. So I will defend the right to, call myself a woman and you a man, and to use language accurately and truthfully. And that's what this all boils down to in the end. But I'm not the only one who's being dragged through lawfare, Neil. There are several people in Australia at the moment, and the weights are all on the other side, unfortunately.
Weights on the other side. Let me come back to this and stay with the money thing for a few moments, because it does seem to be a little unfair, but radical gender activists can bring a complaint, and really it's complaint after complaint, and you mentioned Bernard Gaynor, like 42 complaints, but it doesn't cost them a single cent. How does this work? That does certainly sound unfair.
Oh, correct. Well, in my case, complaints were made to the police or made privately for applications of apprehension of violence orders. All of them were either withdrawn or denied, although one man is now appealing that decision. And then the other ones were vilification complaints made under the Anti-Discrimination Act in New South Wales. And the Anti-Discrimination Act has no protections for females who want to protect female sex-based rights, but there's tons of opportunities and protections for males who want to appropriate womanhood. And so under that law, they're allowed to make as many complaints as they like. It all has to go before the courts. They tried to get it before the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal. The New South Wales Attorney General had to intervene in that case, both those cases, and dismiss them. And now they've been referred to the federal local court in Sydney. So very expensive for all these motions and notices and directions hearings and then finally hearings. And this has been going on since March 2023. My next hearing date at this stage isn't until February 2025. So, it's a very long drawn out process. As they say, the process is the punishment. But I'm racking up a $100,000 bill. Lyle Shelton has racked up a $300,000 bill. Bernard Gaynor, it's just hard to put a figure on it. Louise Elliott in Tasmania was not able to get her funds recovered when she was taken through this process. And Sal Grover, it has cost her $500,000, and there's a cap on recovering funds at $50,000. So it's very unfair, Neil, and we don't have a choice. We have to defend ourselves in court. I'm not a lawyer. I need to employ people who know what they're doing and what the law is about. So far, they've been worth every cent because I've been successful in those 6 cases, but there's still a long way to go.
As you say, you've been successful in the 6 cases. Let me ask you, though, is it the case that mostly courts are finding in favour of those Christian defendants, and somehow or other the bills keep mounting up, even though the court finds in your favour?
Yeah, look, at the moment, like I said, it's all being technicalities because it's been in the wrong jurisdiction. Of course, my words were not violence, and so the apprehension of violence orders all failed because, calling someone a male is not an act of violence. However, they're persisting because they can. They're appealing because they can. And, this could... How long's a piece of string? This could just go on and on and on as my resources are depleted, as people get weary in this fight. But I can't get or won't get weary in this fight because it's too important.
Clearly, something is very wrong with anti-discrimination laws in this country. I wonder if you know, are all of these things we're talking about, are they uniform right across the states and territories? Is it something that's just for New South Wales because you live in New South Wales? Something certainly very wrong with those laws. Is there any likelihood that there's any change? Is there anyone lobbying for change?
Yeah, look, great questions, Neil. It's pretty much the same right across Australia under all state laws. As I mentioned before, Louise Elliott, she is in Tasmania, and it's a very similar situation down there. Even Senator Claire Chandler was dragged before the tribunal, and she stood up and fought that at her own expense. Yes, there are some people who are prepared to stand up. John Ruddock, the MLC in New South Wales, he's already made comments in Parliament about the unfairness of anti-discrimination laws and that they need to be scrapped. And we've got people federally who, talk a lot about free speech, whether it's Senator Malcolm Roberts, Alex Antic, Jared Rennick and others, who have been really strong on these issues because, we need to be able to have honest conversations and debates in this country and not just be shut down because activists don't like the truth. And we've got to move away from this, labelling truth speech as hate speech, because it's not. I don't hate anyone. I don't hate these men. I simply want to defend women's sex-based rights, services and sports.
Share your thoughts here for a few moments, Kirralie, around being a Christian in the 21st century. Do we have to just get used to this sort of behaviour? The cost of standing up for biblical truth. Is this something we ought to be adjusting our expectations around?
Look, I think it's going to get harder and harder. But, in this case, biblical truth is truth. It's truth regardless of whether you're a Christian or not. I am a Christian, and that is the foundation of my belief and my decision to not back down on these things. But the fact is, I have a lot of supporters who don't identify as Christians at all, but they know it's the truth, Neil. It's unarguable. It's evidence-based. It's fact-based. And yes, it's getting harder. The Labor government and, supported by the Greens want to bring in tighter restrictions around our speech and what can be done online with the Safety Commissioner. And they all seem to be targeting what is truth, what is real, and what they don't like because it challenges their ideological views.
You mentioned a whole bunch of names like Bernard Gaynor or Lyle Shelton, Louise Elliott, Sal Grover. There's lots of names, and your name is there on that list, Kirralie Smith. You're leading Binary, more than 100,000 email subscribers. You mentioned, thank you so much to the supporters who are a part of that organisation, binary.org.au. No doubt there's always room for a few more friends. Is there a way that listeners today can make a contribution towards, sometimes we want to make a donation to this or to that, but a contribution to help offset the legal challenges when people like yourself are dragged before the courts. What are the thoughts here? Can you make a donation when you go to binary.org.au?
Absolutely. There is a /donate button. You can do that online. You can also contact me at info@binary.org.au and I can give you our banking details or a PO box for a check. The reality is, Neil, we cannot continue without the generous support of people who make those donations. I can't fund this on my own. I really do need others to help me and to put to help with that funding, because this is a very important battle in Australia and we're going down a very disturbing pathway, not just when it comes to gender, but to free speech in general, or truth speech. And as we've already acknowledged, that biblical truth is truth, and our opportunities and abilities to speak the truth are being hampered at every turn. So we need to ensure that we still have that freedom here in Australia.
Is there some sort of a fighting fund that is set up somewhere so that when there are people like yourself, Kirralie, who are dragged before the courts, that there's some way that there is an ability to be able to fund some of these legal expenses? Is this something that you'd see as an opportunity to set up sometime?
Yeah, absolutely. We would like to do that in the future. I guess at the moment it's just, we're just getting by to fund the legal actions that I have. I know that Lyle and Sal and others, are also busy fundraising for their cases. The HRLA, the Human Rights Law Alliance, is doing great work in this space as well, protecting Christians who are being penalised. And I know that they have a great fundraising campaign as well. But I know, in talking to all of those people, our desire is to have a fighting fund, and that will hopefully come, sooner rather than later. But so far, the generosity of Australians has been magnificent in making sure that all of us are able to defend free speech and truth and to stay in the fight.
Well, Kirralie Smith, thanks so much for updating on that. And it's not an easy thing to deal with, the fact that there are all sorts of unfair things that are happening with radical activists who are throwing accusations at Christian leaders who want to stand for biblical truth. And as Kirralie says, it's common sense truth. You don't have to be a Christian to know that there are some things that are obvious. Kirralie Smith leads the organisation called Binary. You can connect with Kirralie. You can perhaps become their next email subscriber, get some regular updates. More than 100,000 Australians are already subscribers there. Binary.org.au, and keep your eye out for that donate button and perhaps make a contribution towards some of these mounting legal expenses. Kirralie Smith, thanks so much for updating us today on 2020.
Thanks for having me, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.